We'll call the meeting for Tuesday, January 31st to order. It's hard to believe, but this is the last day of January. We start into February tomorrow, and we're only about 3 weeks away from the last committee date. So a lot of work to do between now and then. I want to point out to each of you, I think there were some questions on Senate Bill 15 last week that you had a hearing on, and Eric Turek from the Kansas Insurance Department has provided some responses to those, and they are in today's packet. We're going to start with bill introductions. Eric, you have one?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome back, Mr. Chairman. Eric Turek here with the Kansas Insurance Department. We would request the introduction of RS 0338. This is a simple statutory cleanup bill. Sometimes there have been some statute numbers or subsections that have been moved. This is simply a reconciliation of that.
Okay, committee, are there any questions? Any objections? Eric, I've raised your debt ceiling twice now. Do I need to do it again, or do you think you're done?
I think I'm done.
Perfect. Okay, we will now turn our attention to a hearing on Senate Bill 25. Eileen, would you like to give us a bill brief?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Senate Bill 25 amends KSA 40-246C pertaining to the premium tax assessed on surplus lines insurance. Under current law, on March 1st of each year, each licensed agent is required to collect and pay a 6% premium tax on the total gross premiums charged, less any return premiums for the previous calendar year on surplus lines insurance transacted during the previous calendar year. Senate Bill 25 would simply amend the premium tax rate to 3%, commencing with a taxable year beginning January 1st, 2024. I would like to call the committee's attention to a printing error. It was not my error. A printing error that's appearing on line 8. After the 6%, you see kind of a stray hyphen there and a couple of extra spaces. That was a printing error. It is correct in the engrossed system, so if the committee were to act favorably upon the bill, you would actually see the correct bill text. And with that, Mr. Chair, I can stand for questions.
Thank you, Eileen. Committee, are there questions? Senator Pittman.
Thank you, Eileen. I forgot to ask one question before. How long do you have the knowledge, do you know how long 6% has been the rate, or is that something I'll ask the conferees?
I believe you can ask the conferees that, or I can look it up for you, one way or the other.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Thank you, Eileen. We will now turn our attention to the proponents. We have Beth Smoller, with General Counsel with the Kansas Association of Insurance Agents. Welcome, Beth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Beth Smoller with the KAIA. I will try not to just regurgitate what's in my written testimony and primarily stand for questions, but we have worked closely to get this bill introduced. We feel the 6% creates an undue financial burden on a lot of Kansas small businesses who perhaps do not have any other options than going to the non-admitted marketplace for their insurance coverage. There are also times when the non-admitted or surplus marketplace, terms mean the same, when the products and coverages they can get through that marketplace have more flexibility, they may have better coverage. And so with the hard market that we are currently experiencing in insurance, we see more and more business going to that surplus marketplace. That surplus lines tax collected has continued to climb. The amount of business written in the non-admitted market has almost doubled since 2017, which is just another sign of the hard market. Non-admitted carriers, again, they give flexibility, sometimes, frequently are more expensive already, and so when you add that 6% tax on top of it, makes it even more expensive. However, non-admitted carriers are still a good option and sometimes the only option for a lot of businesses. Non-admitted carriers do still have to be approved and on a white list that the insurance department keeps, and they're still subject to several statutes, including the Unfair Trade Practices Act. So if consumers have issues and need to, get redress, they still can. So with that, I will stand for questions and hopefully can answer them.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Senator Pittman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Beth, for your testimony. Can you give just for us and anybody listening online, can you give us an example of the type of business who might take advantage of a surplus line? And so we understand the extent of our Kansans and businesses that are taking advantage of this. Do you have some numbers and maybe just a solid example that might crystallize this for us?
I can give you a very good example would be a new business venture. So if you are looking to open a Ford dealership in Seneca, Kansas, and you've not owned a car dealership in the past, you are a new business venture, chances are you're not going to be able to find coverage with an admitted carrier because they just don't want to take a chance on a new business yet. They want to see that you've been in business for 3 years. It's also very common, new business ventures, period, whether it's a car dealership, a restaurant, a retail store, anything that is new is generally very hard to find an admitted carrier that will write it. And there are also other businesses by their very nature, fireworks manufacturing, I always use as a very egregious example, but the type of businesses that just do things that are not always easy to insure, they are probably a little higher risk, tend to fall to the non-admitted side of things.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. 6% to 3% is a 50% tax cut, right?
Correct.
And new information shows that it's been in place for about 30 years. Why such a drastic reduction on this particular line versus many other kinds of cuts that are sitting out there as options to go for? Why not across the board kind of reductions for insurance companies or corporations in general? Why this specific cut? What kind of justifies it at this point in time?
At this point in time on this one, I would argue that the surplus lines tax in particular being leveled, it unduly affects Kansas small businesses and consumers. They're the ones who pay that 6%. I know admitted carriers that do file and go through all of the paperwork with the insurance department, they pay a separate rate. I believe it's 2%, although there is a very complex formula involved with that. Non-admitted carriers don't pay that amount. Dropping it to 3% would also bring us in line more with the average and the median across the U.S. Why it's 6% and has been that way for years, I don't have the answer, but we just feel like 3% is a more reasonable amount for those consumers and businesses that really don't have a choice other than to put their insurance coverage with a non-admitted carrier.
Last question would be, when you talk about the average median, what is that number as far as your folks see across other states or even across our region?
It is 3 to 4% is the range, I would say. Our executive director probably knows that number by memory. I do not, so I can let him speak. But 3 to 4% is generally what we see.
Any additional questions? I see none. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
Committee, I'll call your attention to proponent written-only testimony from Marley Carpenter on behalf of the Kansas Association of Property and Casualty Insurance Companies, Robert Fee, President of Fee Insurance Agency from Hutchinson, Kansas, Dirk Daveline, Vice President, Chief Financial Officer, and Treasurer of SPS Companies in Manhattan, and John Meach, Director of Government Relations, Wholesale and Specialty Insurance Association. Are there any additional proponents that would like to testify on Senate Bill 25? Are there any neutrals that would like to testify on Senate Bill 25? Any opponents? I see none. We will, Eileen? You can.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Pittman had asked what the rate or how long the 6% rate had been in effect. When the bill was enacted in 1955, it was 4%. It went up to 6% in 1992, and that's the rate currently.
Okay, thank you for that information. Okay, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 25. Committee, that completes our work for today. Tomorrow, we will have a hearing on raising the statutory limit on alternative investments for the Capers Fund. And then on Thursday, we will work bills previously heard, and I will get that list put together today, but you can anticipate anything we've heard probably gets worked on Thursday. Any other business in front of the committee? I see none. We're adjourned.